Well, good morning. It's April 18th, Wednesday morning. This morning I shot a little video while I was at work. Used my cell phone. Not the first time I've done that now. But it's a continuation of my End Times Russia versus the U.S. series. So, before I get started on that, well, I do want to warn you of the shakiness of the video. I was doing my rounds, walking stairs and walking on uneven ground. So, you know, if the video makes you get dizzy or makes you feel sick to your stomach, just close your eyes, but keep listening to the audio because that's the important part. There is one part where I accidentally cut it off, and when I turned it back on, I was still talking, and I say something about personal treason. What I said about personal treason, just so that you know, just a facetious remark. One of my keys did not work to a door, and I called that personal treason. But what I really wanted to explain was the whole purpose of starting this channel, the whole purpose of doing these videos. What I really want to do is I really want to get my lessons that I've been doing, my teachings on the book of Revelation, I want to get them out. I want to get them out to other people. So that was the whole reason for doing this YouTube channel. It's a very in-depth lesson. It's not just verse by verse. It's actually even in some areas word by word on the lesson. So when I say it's very detailed, I mean it is extremely detailed. We've done off and on for 5 years now, and we're not even a third of the way through. We're not even a fourth of the way through. Okay? The problem is, in that 5-year period, about halfway through, I had a computer malfunction and lost the first half of all those lessons that I'd done. I still have them on paper only. So what I need to do is I need to transfer those paper lessons. I need to create PowerPoints out of them so that I can show these lessons on the screen while I'm doing them. That way you're not just looking at this face, you can actually see what I'm talking about. Okay? And I will get to them, but I just ask that you understand that I have my family, I have my work, I have my Sunday school teaching lessons that I have to prepare for and create, and then I have my Christian persecution prayer list that I put out on a weekly basis. These all things have to come first, but I didn't want to start up a YouTube channel and then just put out 1 or 2 videos and not do anything on it. So again, this will be a continuation of the End Times versus Russia. Again, if the video drives you crazy, just close your eyes and listen to the audio. And I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. Today's Wednesday, April 18th. It's been nearly a week since the U.S., Great Britain, and France launched missiles against Syria. And yet, strangely enough, there really hasn't been much of a Syrian response or a Russian response. Now, you remember in my first video, I told you that it is my belief that Satan is trying to get forces to join together to cause the United States and Russia to go to war with each other. But that didn't happen. And I don't expect this video to be too terribly long. But one of the things I want you to think about that did happen, or did not happen, depending on how you look at it, is, depending on whose numbers you believe,
US, Britain, and France launched 103 or 108 or 118 missiles into Syria. That was a long climb. Give me a second here. Okay, and we're back. Now the point I was getting to was there was anything from 103 to 118 missiles fired off by these three nations into Syria. And yet, strangely enough, only 3 targets were hit. And if you look at the satellite images, the third target actually the missile missed the building itself, although it did damage the building is still standing. The primary target was supposedly a chemical weapons manufacturing plant built within the confines of a university, within the confines of, was it Damascus, I believe? I'm going to have to look it up and see if I'm right or wrong. I'm going to say Damascus. But here's my point. If we're so upset about Syria firing off chemical weapons into their own people by bombing, airdropping chemical weapons onto their own people, why in the world would we, as the good guys, why are we trying to blow up a chemical manufacturing plant inside a major city? Isn't that going to actually send off more chemical weapons? Isn't that going to cause more deaths by chemical weapons? Not to mention, the explosions. Now, here's one of the other weird things, and you're not hearing too much talk of this, but Russia and Syria claim that they shot down a grand total of 79 of our missiles. Now, the Americans and the Britons and the French, but primarily the Americans, are saying, no, they didn't shoot down any of our missiles. So, somebody's telling the truth and somebody's lying. But my question is, if we're shooting 118 off, even if it's 103, why did we only hit 3 targets? Another question that I have is, why are the satellite images that the United States provided as evidence of our successful strike, why are they of such poor quality? And here's what I mean. When I was in the Air Force, my first 12, 13 years was spent as an photographic imagery processing specialist, which basically means I processed and printed film. Now, I had to have a top secret clearance and the code words and all that. And I can tell you that in the 1980s, our intelligence industry was very upset with President Ronald Reagan because he was showing photos taken from our satellites which could very clearly show Russian nuclear missile silos and stuff. And I mean like crystal clear. And I mean like really good blown up images. That was in the 80s. Now here we are 30 plus years later. 30 years later. And all we can get to prove the damage is some really low satellite imagery. I'd be willing to bet, I haven't tried it out myself, so I can't say for certain, but I'd be willing to bet that you'd get better imagery off of Google Earth than what the Pentagon is putting out as far as proof of what we did. So that tells me something is going on. So we have one of two ways to look at this. Either Russia did exactly what they said and shot down the overwhelming majority of our missiles. If that's the case, that's pretty bad news for the United States. And of course, the Pentagon would never want to admit anything like that. And I'm not saying it's true. I don't know. I don't know. There's this other possibility. And we'll get to this possibility in just a second. Let me get through this door safely. And that possibility is that our president, who has repeatedly said he does not want to be involved in the Middle East, in particular in Syria, who has repeatedly said that he doesn't want to do ISIS fighting for them, and oh yeah, by the way, before that raid happened, you remember that Syria said they were able to successfully move all their weapons, they moved all their aircraft out of their air bases that they feared we would strike. How did they know? How did they know where we were going to strike? How did they know, and how come they had time? They had several days worth of time to get all this stuff moved out of the way so that we could strike and hit empty places. How did they know? So here's theory number 2. That the president worked in conjunction. That our American president worked, backdoor in conjunction with the Russians to say, hey, we got to save face here. We've given this line in the sand that we said you're not allowed to cross. And we don't really think you did it. We know it was the rebels that did it. But we've got to save face. So we've got to do a strike. But hey, how about if we give you a chance to move your stuff out? How about if you let us hit a few targets so we can claim victory? And, if you want, you can even shoot down some of our missiles. We'll let them just fly in a straight path. Something on that order, so that both countries actually get to save face. And there's no war. I mean, you think about it. Russia was rattling their sabers, saying, if you do this, there will be consequences. And yet, it's been almost a week and there's been no consequences. That seems a little odd to me. Now, that theory that I was just giving you, it may sound far-fetched, and to some, it might even sound traitorous. Us working with the Russians? Are you kidding me? Get real. And if we are, that's treason. But is it really? Okay, here we go with a whole bunch more stairs. And I did a really hard legs workout yesterday. That's why all these stairs are getting to me. But this is what I do. So anyway, my question is, would it actually be treason if the United States worked with Russia to allow us to save face while allowing them to save face and to keep both nations from going to war with each other? Because that would be the real treason. Like he didn't work. Now, to me, that's personal treason right there. But to get back on the subject, these two superpowers, and make no mistake, Russia never lost her superpower status. Going to war and launching World War III because of I'm going to use the term minor, not to upset people. And here again, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I am saying it was a false flag. False flag does not mean people didn't die. False flag does not mean it didn't happen. False flag means it's something to distract the attention of the American people. Okay? As I understand it, the term came about back in the days of the pirate sailing ships, when they would raise on their pirate ships the flags of other nations. Like if they were coming up upon a French trading vessel, they would raise a French flag to fool the ship's captain and stuff into thinking, oh, it's our own people, don't worry about it, and catch them off guard, catch them totally unprepared. That's a false flag. So, as I said, starting, a basically global thermonuclear war, World War III, over a minor chemical weapons attack in Syria. That is what I would call real treason. So again, I ask you, would it really be treason? And would it really be too far-fetched for our President Trump to get together with Russian President Putin and say, look, we've both got to save face. We've both got to do something. So how about if we work out a deal so that we can both say, oh, mission accomplished, and thump our chests while we're doing it. To me, that seems a very likely scenario. and it would get President Trump out of the deep state doghouse. I mean, you think about it. This was something that all the Democrats, all the Republicans, and all the mainstream media, we're talking about all the people that are anti-Trump, were clamoring for, demanding, and cheering when they got it. Why would Trump accede to those demands? Why would he give them everything they were demanding when he campaigned against doing exactly this? Perhaps it gives him wiggle room to do more important things that he's trying to accomplish. Perhaps he's pulled his own false flag on those who launched a false flag attack against him and against America with the Syrian chemical weapons. Like I said, when you look at it that way, it doesn't sound too far-fetched. Either way you look at it, something, and I prefer to say someone, has kept Russia, Iran, and China from retaliating against the United States, Great Britain, and France. Obviously, the major party here would be the United States. Something or someone has kept them from retaliation. Why? Who? How? And why? That's the big question. And the answer, my friends, is not blowing in the wind. The answer is found in the pages of Scripture. No matter what man tries to do, no matter what his plans are, no matter what he tries to accomplish, it is the Lord God Almighty who is in control. He is in complete and total control. And He is working. And He is preparing us for the time of the end. And He is setting the stage for the time of the end. So what should be a major concern to us, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, then what should be your major concern is, am I living for Jesus Christ? Do others know I'm a Christian by how I live, by how I act? Am I, in one way or another, bringing others to know Jesus Christ? And if you're not a believer in Jesus Christ, if you do not consider Him the Son of God, the only begotten Son of God, if you do not consider His sacrifice, the atoning sacrifice for your sin, the one that gets you salvation, the one that the only way to avoid the lake of fire, hellfire and damnation for all eternity, is to have faith in Him and trust in His sacrifices, all encompassing. These are the only two things we really need to worry about. Remember, when Jesus was telling the parable about the 4 soils, one of the soils fell in ground, but it was choked out by the thorns and the weeds. And what did that mean? He said that meant that this ground had received the word and believed in it. But then they let the cares of this world choke their life out of them. And of course, this is a spiritual metaphor. It's choking their spiritual life out of them. So that the end result was they didn't have that life anymore. We need to prepare ourselves. We need to prepare ourselves for the end. I'm not saying it's going to come in my lifetime. I'm not saying it's going to come in your lifetime, but it's coming. It's surely coming. The signs are getting closer and closer. The signs of Jesus Christ coming are getting closer and closer. And we need to prepare ourselves to go through the worst. This is something I teach all the time, whether it be about the doctrine of eternal security, meaning once you're saved, you're always saved, you cannot lose your salvation, or be it the doctrine of the pre-tribulation rapture, and vice versa, be it the doctrine of we can give up our salvation, or the doctrine of a post-tribulation rapture or pre-wrath tribulation rapture. My point is, we need to be prepared to be wrong. Because if we're prepared to be wrong, then we should end up being okay. If you don't believe that you can give up your salvation or lose your salvation, then you should be all right if you prepare to be wrong. What do I mean by that? Well, rather than taking a chance on eternal security, you live as if you could lose your salvation. That would actually help keep you from living a sinful lifestyle. The same thing with the pre-tribulation rapture. If you prepare yourself to go through the tribulation, if you prepare yourself to be persecuted, if you prepare yourself to be martyred even, for your faith in Jesus Christ, then you're ready when it happens. But if it doesn't happen, if you're wrong, if you're wrong about the pre-tribulation rapture, then you're prepared. You're prepared and everything's all right. Because you prepared yourself for trials and tribulations. If you believe that you are going to go through the tribulation and you prepare yourself for it and you're wrong, well, how big of an error is it that you have made? It's not. It's not an error. It's not a big deal, because you will be raptured. You won't have to go through that tribulation, but God will know that you have prepared yourself, and He will reward you accordingly. Just as if you believe that you can lose your salvation, and so therefore you live a life that's free of sin, as free as we can get in our fallen state. Because you live that way because you don't want to take any chance on losing your salvation. Where's the downside in that? There is no downside in that. There's none. Because that means you will be living the kind of life that Jesus Christ wanted you to live. And there will only be rewards for you in the next life. I really didn't think this video was going to go this long. But I'm glad it did. I'm glad it did. And you got to see some of my sights. I know it's dark and you really couldn't see. But hey, what you just saw was my world. Y'all have a good day. May God bless you. And we'll see you on the next one.